A story that Connecticut is the worst place for retirees to live. The website 247wallstreet.com has come out with a study. 10 states that cannot pay their bills, and Connecticut makes the top 10, unfortunately, coming in at number 9. The report goes on to say in the past 2 years, Connecticut has had a combined budget shortfall of just under $10 billion. That said, we welcome to the program 30th District State Senator Andrew Roraback. Senator, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dan. It's nice to be with you.
Always a pleasure. What are we to make of this budget situation in Connecticut, even in the aftermath of the largest tax hike in state history?
Well, I think the reality is, Dan, that all of the tax increases are very real to all of us paying the taxes. All of the spending increases are very real, but few of the savings are going to prove to be real. So we continue to grow our government in Connecticut at a rate which far exceeds the ability of the taxpayer to afford, and it's catching up with us.
And yet we're not led to believe that. We're led to believe the opposite, that the government has been reduced.
Yeah, but in any home in Connecticut, if you spend more this year than you spent last year, you don't say, we've reduced our budget. In Connecticut, we're spending more this year than we spent last year, and we spent more last year than we spent the year before. We haven't gotten the message in Hartford, even when we have been facing an economic climate as difficult as any since the Great Depression.
And I'm sure you saw the story that made the rounds last week on the website ctmirror.org that the state treasurer is now taking money earmarked for specific bonding projects and putting it into the general fund because, Senator, there is a cash flow problem for the state right now.
Yeah, and all that from a governor who said he was going to introduce GAAP to the state of Connecticut, generally accepted accounting principles, and right now there's very little about our accounting principles which should be generally accepted by anyone.
Not to mention, we have $71.6 billion in unfunded liabilities. Talk about that.
Well, the real gorilla in the room, for all of our controversy about this year's budget and next year's budget, Connecticut and Illinois are in a horse race for which state's pension system is going to go bankrupt first. And I'm going to be introducing legislation this year, Dan, and you'll hear more about it in the weeks ahead, to say that when people are newly hired by the state of Connecticut, there will be no pension padding. Believe it or not, I think I'm going to have a fight on my hands with the union leadership, even proposing a bill as modest as that for new hires, we're going to put an end to this practice. I'm going to try my best to get it passed, but I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, and I'm sure you will get that fight with union leadership. But at some point, Senator, this has got to stop. We are spinning out of control, both, as you know, at the national level, but even here in the state of Connecticut with these unfunded liabilities.
Yes, no question. And the unfunded liabilities are going to catch up with us very soon, depending on what rate of interest. Now, with interest rates so low, our pension funds are not growing at a rate which enables them to keep pace with what they're paying out. So the day of reckoning is going to be here, some would say as soon as 2016, 2017. It may only be 5 or 6 years before we don't have enough money to meet our promises.
And, Senator, what of our senior citizens, that story which came out yesterday about how Connecticut is the most expensive state in which to live for retirees? What can we do for senior citizens to make this a more affordable state?
Well, one thing we could do is say to senior citizens, we're not going to tax your pensions. You worked hard all your life. You paid your taxes every step of the way. Now you get a pension, and we want to tax that too. Even a government pension, people that are in the military get a pension, and we can't keep our hands off of anything. And that's why we got rated the worst place to retire. Is it any wonder that all of us have so many friends and family who who have chosen to go to Florida or South Carolina, you name it. Any place is better than Connecticut when it comes to holding on to your retirement money.
But do you think your colleagues in the state legislature will get that message?
I'm not holding my breath. You know, we have been playing a game of chicken with Connecticut's residents for a long time, and we play the game of chicken the consequences are most dire when we play chicken with our most successful residents. Because when people pack up and leave Greenwich or West Hartford and say, you know what, I've had enough, I'm going to Florida, we don't get a dime from them in income tax or estate taxes. Once they pull up stakes, we lose that game of chicken, and we lose it big.
What do you think is going to be the dominant subject in the upcoming session? You have to deal with budget issues, correct? Because it is a short session?
Yes, we're supposed to only deal with budget issues, but that rule can often be stretched. And, you know, the governor is making education a signature issue of the session. I think it's going to be very interesting to see whether we can accomplish real reforms that make a difference for students in Connecticut, and you know, see if the degree to which the governor is willing to challenge some of the status quo in Connecticut's public schools.
Can you bring about real education reforms without going back to the people and raising taxes?
Oh, absolutely. Our education system doesn't need more money. We just need the money that's going into the system to be spent more wisely, in my view. So I don't think we have to raise taxes to improve our education system. What we need to do is to look at the recipe in places where we are succeeding. And I, for one, will always look to the Amistad Academy in New Haven as Exhibit A of how we can succeed.
And, Senator, getting back to what we were talking about earlier about the precarious financial situation, the President of the United States today, by letter, notified the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, that he needs to raise the nation's debt ceiling by another $1.2 trillion.
Well, I think it's deja vu all over again.
It sure is.
And, you know, the super committee has failed us. I think Congress has failed us, quite frankly, in its inability to make the tough choices that need to be made to keep our country solvent.
It's certainly scary. Senator, thanks very much for spending some time with us this afternoon, and now you can go back to your dad duties.
All right, Happy New Year, Dan, to you and your listeners. Thank you.
Same to you. Take care. Senator Andrew Roraback. Let's get a...